This week on the Salesforce Admins podcast, we're joined by Chris Emmett, consultant, data enthusiast, and Salesforce evangelist accidentally. Well, Chris is passionate about data, and he takes us on a journey from legacy systems and those DOS screens to databases and AI-powered actions, all while sharing practical advice on how to clean up your data without making it feel like you're boiling the ocean. So if you've ever wondered how to prepare your org for Agentforce, or why data without context is basically useless, this one's for you. So listen in, share it with somebody who maybe is swimming in a sea of records. So let's have Chris swim his life raft over, and let's get him on the podcast. So, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, it's good to be here. I got a note from Jennifer Lee. She saw the session that you and Jonathan did at TDX London about cleaning data and cleaning metadata. And last week we talked with Jonathan about cleaning metadata. So this week, of course, we're going to clean our data, because who doesn't have clean data, right? But let's start off first with a little bit about you, Chris. How'd you get into Salesforce, and why are you so passionate about clean data?
Yeah, before I start that, you said who doesn't have clean data? It really should be the other way around.
I know it was a rhetorical question to get people to listen, to be like,
yeah.
oh, that but there could be like that one person that tunes into the podcast like, I don't need to listen to this. My data is sparkling.
You know what? If there is a company out there with 5 people who just opened up last week, their data is going to be impeccable, and they do not need to listen to this podcast. They can tune out.
Right.
So yeah, I started in the ecosystem in a weird and wonderful way, because a lot of, you've obviously got your accidental admins that find a weird and wonderful way into Salesforce. I was an accidental consultant. So I started out fresh from university as a desktop support engineer, just fixing Windows and fixing printers and fixing Office, and it was great fun. Then I did a bit of work as a developer, cutting my teeth on Visual Basic 6 and .NET all the way back in 2008. But that entire team was made redundant to make way for an off-the-shelf manufacturing system. And as a SME, as an expert in how that old system worked, I was brought in. And then the project manager on that project quit, and I became a project manager. And I was a project manager for 10 years. And then about 10 years later, around 2016, I was working for a company, and we were really interested in changing how we managed products. We wanted a brand new system to manage our projects. And one of the products that we looked at was Salesforce. And my word, I was blown away. I mean, literally within 1 day of using Salesforce, I was creating formula fields and workflow rules, as there were back then. And I was just fell in love. And this is coming from a person who had spent the best part of a decade dealing with systems where if you needed to add a field, it would take 2-3 months to get through. And I was dealing with a system where I could start a sentence explaining to someone what Salesforce was, and by the time I finished that sentence, I could have created a field. I could have expanded that data model, and I fell in love with it. The company I was working for did not fall in love with it, and that pilot failed. It fell by the wayside, but I was hooked. I was like, man, I need to change my career. So I start looking for project management jobs within the Salesforce space. I had never project managed software before. I'd project manage big old factory systems that were very waterfall in their approach. I'd never done agile before. So I was applying and applying and applying, getting nowhere. I was probably applying for about 8 months. And then this small company in Cambridge were like, dude, you are not great for a project manager, but you seem really enthusiastic. Had you considered being a consultant? And I went, but yeah, because it's not managing the projects that I love. It's the system that I love. It's Salesforce as a platform that I love. I want to be able to empower other companies to improve themselves through Salesforce. So I got a job there as a consultant, and that was 2017. And I have just been building up and flourishing. And since then, I've got 600 odd badges on Trailhead and I think 23 certs now. So I've just kind of gone all in and built my career up.
Wow. Holy cow. That's a lot. I feel such a kinship with you because when I started doing Salesforce stuff, I worked at a publishing company and we had this Apple-based CRM. I can't even remember what it was called, but there was one guy in the office that still knew how to use it, and he would create views or lenses, and that was basically the only way we got things done. Like all of the salespeople, I was one of them, had to go to him and be like, "Please, Mr. J, would you create a view of," because none of us knew how to use it. And it was incredibly complex. And then we tried to go to like this was 2004. We tried to go to this other web-based CRM thing. It was called Absolute Busy. And if you wanted a field created, you had to log a ticket. And then the person that created the CRM in Sweden would create the field. And it would be like it was sometimes months. Like, I just need another phone field. How hard can that be?
Yeah.
And then I went to another company and they had Salesforce, and I was like, oh, click, click, boom. And I remember I was like, this is almost too easy to create a field. This is dangerous.
Dangerous is the right word. It is. It's kind of, I'd like to think most Salesforce professionals go through it's not quite like the 7 stages of grief, but it's the 7 stages of Salesforce acceptance. You
Yeah.
kind of go in, you're very skeptical, and then you're like, oh, wow, this can create whatever fields I want, whatever data points I want, whatever automation I want, whatever reporting I want. And then at a certain point, you go, oh, wait a minute, I have just created a monster for myself.
Right.
And then you learn to think before you build.
So, I mean, I feel like that's a good starting point. Is that where you find most people go off the rails? Is maybe they get Salesforce and like, you know what, let's start fresh. And they create too many fields. And then because there's too many fields and they're in such a hurry that they get to bad data.
I look at it a different way.
Okay.
It may be my exposure. I deal with a lot of existing companies. I've not really dealt with a lot of brand new companies. So a lot of existing companies, especially if they're at least 40 or 50 years old, they've got a lot of older systems. They might have a bit of SAP. They might have mainframes kicking around. They might have things written in COBOL or Fortran. And I'd even deal with companies today that have things in MS Access, believe it or not. So the danger isn't, oh, let's just create everything in Salesforce. The danger is 14 years ago, Derek created this field. We don't know what it does. We don't know where it's hooked up to. It's not documented anywhere, but we feel like we should pull it over. So the real danger is actually migrating everything. Because if you don't know what that data point is, you don't know what use it is, you can't validate it, and you can't use it in any meaningful way. Because if you don't understand, and to bring it to the point of this pod, if you don't understand what that data is, what it means, what it's doing for your business, how can an AI agent understand that? An AI agent's not magical. It's not telepathic. It reads the information as if it's a human. It tries to interpret that information. So you've got to know what it means so your AI agent can be told what it means as well.
Yeah, I think people forget that new systems or new features won't save them if they haven't started to save themselves.
Yeah. I was This is genuine, by the way. I was thinking this morning, as I was just leaving the gym, so I can sound like I'm healthy.
Oh, wow. Fancy. My weightlifting for this morning has been coffee cups.
Yeah. So I was thinking this morning, like, oh, what intelligent things can I say on this pod? And I was actually thinking about the meaning of information technology as a term for a department within a business. Information technology. What does that actually mean? It's not about the data. It is, but it's not about the data. It's not data technology. It's not technology that drives data to help a business. It's information technology. And the information that you derive from that data is kind of the most important thing, because you can throw data into a data lake or just into a database and just have it stored there. But if you can't derive useful information from it, and similarly, if an AI agent can't derive useful information from it, it's actually pointless.
Yeah, I've once heard information described as data plus context.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if your data is bad, then it really lacks context. Or you could say it doesn't provide context.
Yeah, it is all about that context. It's and again, just to bring it back to the whole Agentforce thing.
Mm-hmm.
Agentforce needs to understand that context. It needs to be able to derive some meaning from it. Be it so just as a random example, let's say you've got an opportunity. You've got an opportunity record, which is great. And you've got a date on that opportunity. Cool. Agentforce, can you tell me if there's a date on this record? Agentforce might go away and it might find that date. And it might go, cool, Chris, I found a date. It's July the 24th, 2025. Now, if that's written in a note without any context, and I say, Agentforce, what does this mean? It's going to go, well, I don't know, a date in the future. But if it's against the close date field, it's immediately got context and it immediately can derive something from that. It can say, oh, right, okay, so this is the close date. I can see that we are in a negotiation stage. We've got one more stage after this, which is sign contract. It's 24th. It's a few weeks away, or at least from when we're recording. I understand a bit of context. I understand that there's another stage ahead of this, and I've immediately got more information other than just a record with a random date.
Right.
That context is everything, especially for an LLM.
But the irony is, and I've done other episodes on this, you could have a close date, continuing your idea, of July 24th in the close date field, except your company doesn't use that. That's the date that this part of the opportunity is going to close. But then maybe there's a follow-on implementation stage, and that's the context in which you use that. However, if you haven't given your AI any kind of information about that, the context at which you use the close date, ironically, because you have a date in that field, it's bad data, even though it looks like good data.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point of the TDX talk I did with Jonathan, and I'm sure Jonathan's already mentioned this in last week's episode, the data is important. The data has to be valid, but it also has to sit within contextual metadata. Because if you have a field on your opportunity that is called installation date or delivery date or deployment date, whatever,
Right.
and you have an accurate date against that, again, you're giving meaning to that data. You're giving meaning to Agentforce so it can interpret it and give you useful information, because it is about information. It's not about the data. It's the information. In fact, if I had a time machine, I would go back 3 weeks, redo my TDX talk, and it would be called prepping your information like a pro and your, I guess, your meta information.
Yeah. So, but let's kind of pivot into that, because, it's time to get actionable and less heady. It can feel like, and I've heard this 1,000 times, it can feel like boiling the ocean to clean your data. What is your approach that you would suggest people use to start cleaning their data in preparation for deploying Agentforce?
Yeah, sure. So again, unless you are that 3-day-old company with 3 people in and the data is perfect, it's probably safe to assume you are sat on a mountain of data. If you are a relatively small company, maybe it's tens of thousands of records. If you are a medium or enterprise, you might have hundreds of thousands or millions of records. I certainly worked for a company that had 30 million accounts in the system. That is a lot of data. And you cannot possibly begin to go through that top to tail, making sure that every field is correct and accurate and has meaning. So how do you actually break that down? Because you're right, you cannot boil the ocean. We start off by thinking about the actions and the intents that you want your agents to do. So if you want your agent to write an email to a customer if their opportunity is within 5 days of the close date and they've not signed yet, well, what do you need for that? You don't need 300 fields that might be on the opportunity page or 300 fields in that account. You might need the opportunity's name. You need the stage of the opportunity. You need the close date. You need the account and maybe the primary contact of that account. And that's 5 pieces of information. And then you don't really need to think about all of the old opportunities because this is about an action where you are emailing people for opportunities that are about to expire or about to close. So immediately you've gone from 1 million records, let's say, you've got it down to 1,000 records. And then you're only looking at those 5 pieces of data. So you got it down to 1,000 records and you got it down to 5 pieces of information on those 1,000 records. So I'm not going to do the math in my head because I'm terrible at that, but it's...
Nobody should do math live.
Yeah. You're probably looking at about less than 1% of data because you're thinking about the intent of that action, that AI action. You're thinking about exactly what pieces of information you need to help that agent, and you're making sure that that specific data is accurate. And my theory behind this, my thesis, is by doing that, by getting rid of 99% of the data that you don't need to worry about today, you can get agents and agent actions out to your users quicker, which means they're happier, they're trying new things, you're getting feedback on those new things, and it means that you can improve more processes because you're getting more feedback, you're getting more insight into what is helping people, what's hindering people, and you're doing that because you're just targeting the data that matters, and everything else can wait until it's actually needed.
That is probably the most concise, spot-on answer I have heard in a long time.
I felt like I was talking for about 20 or 30 minutes on that.
Nope, you weren't. But targeting the data that matters.
Yes.
I mean, those words, put that on a shirt. Somebody needs to wear that shirt at Dreamforce because it's so that as you were talking through, I was realizing you're really making it from boiling the ocean to boiling a cup of water. You don't have to worry. Everything doesn't have to be perfect for you to start this project. Just the part that you need to worry about. And I was thinking back to last week. So in Iowa, in the U.S. where I live, we had a really bad frost all winter. We didn't get the snow cover that we usually do. And some of my landscaping plans didn't make it because the roots were just burned by the frost. But not all of them, right? Like some of them were hardy and they're fine. And so I called my landscape company. I was like, I need to replace all these. And plus I want different ones anyway. And he's like, good. Because if we go through another winter like this, we're just going to be replacing them. And I promise you this gets somewhere. But much like your analogy, so the landscape company came out, and just in the area that they needed to replant those bushes, they scraped all the gravel, leveled the bed, put new tarp down, replanted the bushes, put the gravel back. They didn't have to clean the entire planter bed and scoop all the gravel out and dig up all the bushes and start from scratch. They only had to do the part that mattered.
Mm.
And I felt like that was like, wow, that's kind of like a real life scenario of, if we're going to implement this and we're going to really laser focus on this one part of it, let's do that. But the other key thing that you said that nobody has said on a podcast about cleaning data is you improve the process while you do it. Because if you're not going to improve the process that led you to the bad data, you're always going to be cleaning data. It's almost like sending a janitor out to a sports stadium to pick up trash because there's no trash cans. Well, if you're not going to sit down and say, okay, how do we put trash cans out so that trash isn't everywhere? All you're doing is sending the janitor back out to clean up trash. You're not actually fixing the problem that led to the trash being everywhere.
Yeah. It's interesting you say it that way, because I genuinely hadn't really thought that far ahead.
Yeah, you had
I
prophetically at
just
night
probably not.
in your brain while you're
Yeah.
sleeping. Chris's brain is like, I got this idea about this process and then it was going to sound smart.
Yeah.
And then it like surfaced while you were working out.
Yeah. People are going to be so disappointed when they see a picture of me, because I'm making it sound like I'm some sort of gym monkey. Monkey, that's probably not the right word.
Well, I could throw your picture in AI.
Yeah.
You
You
like
should.
like
You
Arnold
should.
Schwarzenegger.
You should. Yeah. I look exactly like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, I look more like Captain America at the start of the film.
That is the best description. I look more like Captain America, but at the start of the film.
Thanks. I'm glad you agree. I'm really glad you agree. Oh my! What was the point I was trying to? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Back on track. So the whole point of IT, the whole point of computer systems, is to improve things.
Right.
So if you genuinely are taking an existing process and you are just throwing it at a agent and say, robots, do my bidding, without changing anything, you really are missing the point of IT. It's about evolution. It's about simplification. And it's about making things more efficient. So why wouldn't you try and make it more efficient in the process of moving it over? Because if you don't, you are just lifting and shifting a process. And that is not going to help anyone. It's not going to fix any errors. The worst case of that is that you program an agent with all of the issues and problems that a human would have. So you are just replicating those problems. You got to improve. You got to evolve.
Do you find, because you mentioned you work with mature companies, that often when they're doing a Salesforce implementation, or they're bringing you in, or they're thinking about something, that they're stuck thinking within the constraints of the legacy system that they have?
I was going to be kind, but that sounds terrible.
Well, you don't have to mention. I don't want you to mention.
No. I was going to be kind and say there's the majority of companies will try and hold on to legacy, and there's a few that don't. But actually, I would be as bold as to say every single customer I have worked with, not necessarily through any fault of their own, holds on to the past. And it is either because there's things that they don't know. There might be fields or tables or data points or integrations that no one knows why they exist, and they're afraid of removing them. And in that, the data, they don't know what the data means or whether it's useful. It's just there. So they don't know how to cleanse it. They don't know if it's got any meaning. But then you've got companies who are just in a bind where they've got a 30-year-old system and they do not have the budget to replace it. But Salesforce has got to integrate with it. And there are design decisions 30 years ago for that system that Salesforce has to adhere to. So sometimes it is because the systems that you have to hook Salesforce into are just bound by old design. And then you have to introduce those bad data decisions into Salesforce.
I could see that. I was also thinking back as you were saying that about a week ago, I was standing at a rental counter and I happened to see their screen and it was still a DOS screen. Like I was like, wow, you still work on that. I'm fairly certain the car you're about to hand me keys to has a stronger computing system in it than what you're sitting at right now.
Probably. The phone in their pocket is probably more powerful.
Yeah.
I definitely worked for a company. I can't say their name, I'm pretty sure, but I
No,
worked for a
don't.
company where they were using an MS-DOS program because the person who wrote it, he wrote it in his garage and then retired in the 90s. And if he's still with us,
Oh,
he's probably, I'd like to think, on a yacht somewhere, because the software developers in the 70s probably earned quite a lot of money.
yeah.
He's enjoying life and not thinking about it. But that company was stuck with that MS-DOS program because it did a vital thing and it can't be removed. It can't be replaced because they know it does a vital process, but they don't know how it works. And then it becomes a business risk. It's like, do you risk the operation of the business to try and rebuild this? Or
Right.
do we just leave it? And then another thing I was thinking about this morning, I was thinking a lot of stuff at the gym.
Apparently, holy cow. But
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, you're always thinking like this. This wasn't just this morning.
You are right. You're right. I'm always thinking this. It's my thought process flips between IMDb trivia and Salesforce. But I was thinking that I work with a lot of I have worked with a lot of companies where it's common practice to buy old equipment from eBay.
Oh, wow.
If you're a retailer and you've got systems that haven't been made in 10, 15 years,
Uh-huh.
but you need that equipment, your only course is to scour eBay. And I've worked with 2 or 3 companies that have done that, and it becomes a risk. But again, not to be too mean against them, it's more often than not a budget constraint. So bad systems and bad data with those bad systems is not necessarily because people have just made bad choices or due diligence hasn't been put into it. More often than not, it's about legacy systems and budget. And that's a difficult thing to overcome.
Especially the budget part.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking back. I worked retail in the 90s, and retail in the 90s, if you were a smaller retailer, it was common practice for smaller retailers when the big box companies would change systems, they would have, a clearing out. And smaller retailers could buy enough POS systems that worked, and then enough that didn't work for parts, and literally upgrade their whole system, even though it was used systems. And that was common in retail in the 90s. Now, I mean, now it's all changed. It's all online. I'm sure that doesn't happen. But I remember working for a couple of retailers and like, oh, we're getting new cash registers. And like they would show up and like, why are some of the keys sticky? And they're like, well, they're not new. They're new to us.
Yeah.
uh, Wonder what's creeping around inside of those old systems. But I mean, you bring up a good point, and I think I think I've done a lot of podcasts on cleaning data and cleaning metadata. But what's interesting about this one, to kind of put a point on it, is you pointed at something that none of the others have brought up, which is it's not necessarily bad users' fault that we have bad data. It's sometimes a systematic failure of bad decisioning or a lack of budgeting priorities. that leads to it. It's not just Bob, the sales guy, who puts his call notes in the phone field because that's what he does because he pays no attention. It's sometimes working within the constraints of the budget. And you know, you're probably doing that now. Even doing a Salesforce implementation with AI, you're like, well, we would love to do all this 1 through 5, but we can afford 1 now and maybe 2 later. And, you know, they maybe even start on the second project, and then that's as far as they get on their list of 1 through 5.
Yeah. You know what? If Bob wants to put his data in the wrong field, that is, in my opinion, that is probably a low impact. It's a quick fix because that's either you can tell him to move it, or you can, if it's consistent, you can go in with data loader, export it in Excel, copy it from one column into another column, re-upload, you're done. For me, it's about all of this historical data that you may be pulling into Salesforce, where you don't necessarily understand its context, you don't necessarily understand its validity. And that's where the whole point of trying to identify what's the actual action that you want your AI agent to carry out, and what are the data points that that action needs to interact with. Okay, and then let's tackle those data points and turn those data points, to go way the back to start the conversation, you turn those data points into information, because you cannot boil the ocean. And the majority of companies, at least the ones I've dealt with, have a sea of data that just either makes no sense, or comes from old systems, or comes from unnecessary decisions. And you cannot, there's no business case that will ever be put forward to say we need to spend 10 years improving all of this data. But there definitely would be a business case that says we need to spend a month chipping away at this opportunity data or this account data so we can deliver this agentic functionality.
Right. Spot on. Now, I want to end on a fun note. You said IMDb data.
I like MDB.
Trivia.
Yeah.
Is it trivia about the website IMDb, or is it trivia about movies and TV shows?
Oh wow, I'm really upset that I don't know the history of the website now.
Oh, I kind of do.
Oh, do tell.
I mean, the Cliff Notes version is a guy started, I don't know when, but it was started pretty early in the, maybe even pre-internet. I want to say he either had a huge collection of VHS tapes, or he ran a rental movie store.
Mm-hmm.
And he created this literal database of movies and actors and, you know, actresses and roles and directors. And because he found it fascinating to see what, you know, like we've all heard the 6 degrees or 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, like connecting people to different movies. He found that fascinating. And I want to say early on, Amazon bought it and curated it into the big website that it is now. That's the amount of history that I know about it.
Well, I can add to that.
But it was one person's passion project.
That's crazy. I can add to that in a very in a related way, in a very Salesforce related way.
Oh,
and if anything, that's why we're all here. So during COVID, we were all watching a lot of TV at home. I'm pretty sure I was, and I wanted to track what I was watching. I wanted to be able to give it some fun ratings. And I could have done that in a notebook or on a spreadsheet or in my notes on my phone. But 23 times certified, of course, I'm going to build it on Salesforce.
Yeah, I mean, you have like 600 badges. You can't not.
So I built it in a developer edition Salesforce org, and I was tracking all of the movies, all of the TV programs I was watching during COVID. And to just take it a step further, I didn't build it, I ripped it off the internet, an integration into IMDb to pull the correct title, the director, the Rotten Tomatoes rating, I think,
Yeah.
and the poster and the synopsis. So all I needed to
Oh.
do was type in the title and my own personal rating. And when it saved, it pulled back the poster, all of the cast, the director, genre, everything. And that took one weekend. If people are listening to this and they've never touched Salesforce before, that's how
Mhm.
quick it is to build something in Salesforce. I did that in a weekend.
Mm-hmm. So you're my long lost brother, I swear. No lie, and I can show this to you. I'll show this to you at Dreamforce. Hand to God. I was in the same scenario in December of 2013. I took a long vacation break, and for many years up until that point, I was hooked on Top Gear. And I thought, you know, I should keep track because you could also get all of the Top Gear episodes off of iTunes, off of that. It was called iTunes at that point. And I was like, I should keep track of this so that I know which ones to buy, which ones I like, and like have a whole. And so I literally spent like 30 seconds. I was like, I could do this on a spreadsheet, but wait a minute. Let's do this in a developer org in Salesforce. And I created a Top Gear app and I branded the whole Salesforce org Top Gear with Jeremy Clarkson and all of them. And I had cars and stars and lap times and episode ratings and titles. And I ended up like for almost like a whole weekend straight, just nonstop binging Top Gear and building this org.
That is awesome.
And now it's one of those where if I get like, I have to remember every month I log into it to make sure that org dies. I would cry if that org went away. I seriously would.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not fancy and smart like you. I didn't know I don't know what I'd integrate to. I guess I could integrate it to IMDb to pull that stuff in, but
Yeah.
I more just wanted it of my own information. But it was so old. It was back in the day when you used to stick image files in resources, and
Oh, yeah.
you would do an image. You would create a formula field that returned an image, and that's how I did star ratings on the page.
That is still a valid way to do it. I don't care what anyone
It just
says.
feels so old school, you know. But I remember showing it to somebody and they're like, how did you get stars to show up on the page? It's like, well, let me tell you, you know?
But that's what it's about. I don't care what anyone says. Salesforce for me is about as a profession, you are obviously going into businesses and building out their systems to improve the way they work. But for me, the beauty of a dev org, a developer org, is to be able to just do my own personal random projects where
Uh-huh.
I might have an idea over the weekend. I want to see if it works. And 9 out of 10 ideas may burn and fail, but that one idea out of 10 might be just gold. And all of a sudden I have a movie tracker that I can use and I've learned something. And you know what? I can then take some of that integration knowledge to my next customer. It's about just trying stuff out, exploring, being bold, being crazy.
I would argue even those other 9 are still kind of fun when they fail because there's a moment when you're like, I think this is going to work. Oh,
Yeah.
well, I know it's not going to work now. And now I know what not to do.
Exactly.
Chris, this was a blast.
It was amazing.
I'm so glad I think we talked about some clean data.
Data is important. Data and information. Very important. That's the takeaway.
Yep. We got to get some shirts made for Dreamforce. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. And I'm fairly certain you and Jonathan will have a long legs in presenting your clean data and metadata information to the world.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for having me.
All right, so that's a wrap for today's therapy session with Chris Emmett. I can't help but say we laughed, we learned, we IMDb'd. I will say after the call, we probably went down a rabbit hole of movie fun facts from television shows from the 80s that was incredibly fun. But again, if you're secretly running a DOS system or still mourning a lost developer org, just remember, not all your data deserves your attention. Boil a cup of water, not the ocean. And maybe, for fun, build a movie tracker while you're at it, or a television show tracker. So if you love this episode, be sure to give us a review on iTunes, share it with another admin who needs a nudge in the better direction of cleaning data. And until next time, we'll see you in the cloud.